In-depth analysis of the Communist Manifesto. Introduction: Why the specter persists. In 1848, a specter haunted Europe: communism. Why does this concise text of fewer than 10,000 words, the Communist Manifesto, still resonate after over 170 years? From the roar of factory steam engines to the algorithmic waves of the digital age, how has it become a beacon for those seeking justice and freedom? Let us step into the intellectual world of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels to uncover the historical code and contemporary insights of this manifesto. Chapter 1: The Spark of Ideas, Marx and Engels' Collision. Karl Marx, born in 1818 in Trier, Germany, to a lawyer's family, showed philosophical talent from a young age. He studied law and philosophy at the universities of Bonn and Berlin, deeply influenced by Hegelian dialectics. In 1841, Marx completed his doctoral dissertation on the natural philosophies of Democritus and Epicurus, but his radical ideas led to academic rejection. In 1843, as editor of the Rheinische Zeitung, his criticism of Prussian autocracy forced him into exile in Paris. In Paris, he encountered French socialist thought, met workers' leaders, and began studying political economy. Friedrich Engels, born in 1820 in Barmen, Germany, came from a wealthy textile family. His father expected him to take over the family business, but Engels sympathized with the plight of the working class. In 1842, while working at his family's factory in Manchester, he witnessed the exploitation brought by industrialization. In 1845, he published The Condition of the Working Class in England, using detailed data to expose the realities of child labor, disease, and poverty. This book shocked European intellectuals and laid the foundation for his collaboration with Marx. In 1844, the two met in a Paris cafe, discussing Hegelian idealism and Feuerbach's materialism. They criticized Hegel's abstract speculation and Feuerbach's mechanical limitations, proposing the core of historical materialism: material production shapes social structures, and class struggle drives history. In 1847, they joined the Communist League and were tasked with drafting its program. The Communist Manifesto was born, crystallizing their intellectual synergy. Marx's philosophical insight was the torch lighting the theoretical path, while Engels' practical observations fueled its grounding in reality. For example, Engels documented the tragic life of a Manchester worker, Ellen Carter, who wove cloth for 16 hours a day, earning barely enough to survive, while her child died of malnutrition. These notes directly shaped the manifesto's depiction of proletarian suffering. Marx wrote in the manifesto, "The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it." This famous line encapsulates their shift from theory to action. Their collaboration was not without friction. Marx was stubborn, while Engels was more pragmatic. In 1846, they clashed over theoretical details, particularly their differing interpretations of Feuerbach's materialism. Marx argued that Feuerbach neglected the importance of practice, while Engels valued its critique of religion. Through months of correspondence in Brussels, they dissected their differences. In his theses on Feuerbach, Marx wrote, "For the practical materialist, that is, the communist, the issue is to revolutionize the existing world." This view ultimately persuaded Engels, uniting them in the belief that theory must serve social change. Engels also observed the organizational methods of the Chartist movement in London, suggesting the manifesto include a practical action plan. Their intellectual sparring was a dialectical practice, challenging and elevating each other. This deep exchange not only solidified their friendship but also ensured the manifesto's logical rigor. Engels even financially supported Marx for years, enabling him to focus on writing. Like a steam engine requiring both machinery and fuel, the manifesto's creation depended on their complementary collision of ideas. Chapter 2: The Storm of the Era, Capitalism in the 19th Century. In 19th century Europe, the Industrial Revolution swept like a tidal wave. Manchester's textile mills roared day and night as steam engines and mechanization propelled productivity to new heights. Railways connected cities, steamships crossed oceans, and global trade flourished like never before. Yet, behind this prosperity lay stark exploitation. In 1840, the average life expectancy of British workers was under 30, with child laborers toiling 12 hours daily in mines, prone to accidents. Parisian slums overflowed with the unemployed, while German peasants, stripped of land, became urban wage workers. Capitalism shattered feudal chains but birthed new contradictions. The bourgeoisie amassed wealth through markets and technology, extending Europe's reach to Asia and Africa. After the 1840 Opium War, China was forced to open its markets, and India became Britain's raw material hub. Yet, wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, while the proletariat's labor was cheaply exploited. The manifesto states, the bourgeoisie has subjected the country to the rule of the towns, and has made barbarian and semi-barbarian countries dependent on the civilized ones. In 1848, a revolutionary wave swept Europe. The February Revolution in France overthrew Louis Philippe, uprisings erupted in the German Confederation, and Britain's Chartist movement demanded universal suffrage. These movements reflected the discontent of workers, peasants, and the petty bourgeoisie but failed due to a lack of unified programs. The Communist Manifesto emerged as a theoretical weapon for the proletariat. Take the British Chartist movement. In 1838, worker leader William Lovett drafted the People's Charter, demanding male suffrage and parliamentary reform. Mass rallies drew hundreds of thousands, but internal divisions and government repression led to its failure. Marx noted in the manifesto that workers' movements must move beyond economic demands to seize political power, addressing the Chartists' limitations. Another example is the workers' struggle in Paris, where in 1848, weaver Lucas Brandt organized a strike against wage cuts, demanding better conditions. Though suppressed, the strike awakened class consciousness, spurring unions and cooperatives. These events validated the manifesto's prediction: the proletariat's awakening is historically inevitable. The Industrial Revolution reshaped production and tore apart social structures. Urbanization drove peasants into factories, offering no basic protections. In 1845, London's slums swelled, with poor sanitation leading to cholera outbreaks that killed tens of thousands. In Germany's Ruhr region, entire families, including children, worked in mines, hauling coal through narrow tunnels and suffering frequent injuries. Sociologist Henry Mayhew, in London Labour and the London Poor, documented a sweeper, Mary Hall, who began work at AM for barely enough to buy half a pound of bread. These conditions intensified class antagonism, prompting workers to form mutual aid societies. In 1839, Manchester's cotton spinners founded a mutual aid society to support sick co-workers, planting seeds of collective consciousness. This social rupture provided fertile ground for the manifesto's class struggle theory, leading Marx and Engels to highlight the potential of workers' movements. Meanwhile, intellectual currents surged. Utopian socialists like Saint-Simon and Fourier envisioned ideal societies but ignored class struggle. The Hegelian school split into left and right wings, and while Feuerbach's materialism inspired Marx, it lacked a historical dimension. The Communist Manifesto built a scientific socialist framework by critiquing and synthesizing these ideas. Chapter 3: The core of the manifesto for key themes. The Communist Manifesto is structured in 4 parts, logically rigorous and progressive. Below, we unpack its core ideas. Part 1: The historical view of class struggle. The manifesto opens, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles." Marx and Engels argue that social development is driven by contradictions between productive forces and relations of production. Feudal lords versus serfs, capitalists versus proletarians. Class conflict arises from unequal resource distribution. Class struggle is not only history's engine but also the catalyst for social change. The 1871 Paris Commune vividly exemplified this struggle. The theory hinges on the contradiction between production relations and productive forces. Marx later elaborated in a contribution to the critique of political economy that when productive forces outgrow outdated relations, social change erupts. 19th century capitalism reached this turning point. Mechanized production boosted efficiency but alienated workers into tools. For instance, in 1844, Birmingham blacksmith Thomas Wilson lost his job to a steam hammer, failed to retrain due to limited education, and ended up homeless. Such experiences spurred workers to question their conditions, fostering political awakening. The manifesto stresses that class struggle is not just economic but political. In 1850, Marx analyzed the French Revolution in London, arguing that the proletariat must form independent parties to seize state power. This insight surpassed utopian socialism, lending the manifesto scientific rigor. The brief Paris Commune showcased workers' organizational capacity, offering valuable lessons for later socialist movements. Parisian workers, frustrated by economic hardship after the Franco-Prussian War, seized the city and established a self-governing commune. They introduced an 8-hour workday, universal education, and abolished standing armies, aiming for a just society. Commune leader Louise Michel wrote in her memoirs, "Every day of the Commune proved that workers can manage their own destiny." Though Therapy Chapter 3 continued, the core of the manifesto for key themes. Though crushed after 2 months, the Commune inspired future socialist movements. Part 2, the struggle between bourgeoisie and proletariat. The bourgeoisie advanced productivity but sowed the seeds of its own destruction. The manifesto states, the bourgeoisie not only forges the weapons that bring its death, it also creates the men who wield them, the modern working class. Capitalism's global markets impoverished workers, forcing them to unite and resist. The Luddite movement in 1811 Britain exemplified this struggle, as weavers, unemployed due to mechanization, smashed machines in protest. Though suppressed, it spurred unions and cooperatives, fulfilling the manifesto's prediction of proletarian unity evolving from spontaneous to conscious action. This unity was gradual. Early 19th century workers' movements were often fragmented, lacking long-term goals. In 1824, Britain repealed the Combination Acts, allowing unions but restricting strikes. In 1834, Robert Owen's Grand National Consolidated Trades Union aimed to unite workers but collapsed due to internal conflicts. These early failures built organizational experience. In 1843, Lyons silk weavers formed a mutual aid society, improving wages through collective bargaining, inspiring other European cities. The manifesto foresaw this trend, declaring workers' unity as historically inevitable. Marx and Engels organized the Communist Correspondence Committee in Brussels to connect workers' leaders across countries. This laid the groundwork for the First International and infused the manifesto with internationalist spirit. In Germany, August Bebel founded the Social Democratic Party in 1869, spreading the manifesto's ideas and advocating for workers' rights. Bebel echoed the manifesto, the emancipation of the working class must be the act of the working class itself. Part 3, Critique of Socialist Schools. In the 19th century, utopian socialism and anarchism flourished. The manifesto criticized these schools as detached from reality, emphasizing scientific socialism grounded in class struggle. Fourier's phalanxes relied on moral persuasion, ignoring economic realities, while St. Simon's elite governance sidelined workers. The manifesto argued that only revolution could dismantle capitalism and achieve a classless society. Robert Owen's cooperative communities in 1817, aiming for equality through reform, failed due to weak economic foundations. The manifesto's scientific socialism, rooted in dialectical materialism, views social development as a result of contradictory forces. Capitalism's socialized production clashed with private ownership, necessitating change. The manifesto declares the knell of capitalist production has sounded. This judgment, based on economic analysis, distinguished it from moralistic utopianism. In 1846, Marx's The German Ideology critiqued utopian socialism's idealism, laying the philosophical groundwork for the manifesto. Part 4, Communist Goals and Action. The manifesto aims to abolish private property and establish a classless society. It states, the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property. Private property, the root of class exploitation, must be eliminated to liberate productivity and achieve shared prosperity. Communists support progressive movements and collaborate with workers' parties to overthrow bourgeois rule. The rallying cry, "Workers of the world unite," inspired countless revolutionaries. In 1847, Marx and Engels supported Polish independence at London workers' meetings, embodying internationalism. The manifesto emphasizes a transitional proletarian dictatorship. In 1875, Marx's critique of the Gotha program clarified the need for state-managed economies to transition to communism. Chapter 4 Global echoes the manifesto's practical legacy. After its publication, the Communist Manifesto ignited global workers' movements. In 1864, Marx founded the First International, coordinating international workers' struggles. Though dissolved due to internal splits, it laid the foundation for organized labor movements. The 1871 Paris Commune was the Manifesto's first practical test. The Commune implemented democratic elections, low salaries for officials, and women's participation in governance. Louise Michel promoted educational equality and organized medical aid for injured workers. In the 20th century, the Manifesto shaped global revolutions. In 1917, Lenin's Bolsheviks established Soviet power, drawing on the Manifesto's ideas. Lenin's State and Revolution cited the Manifesto, stressing proletarian dictatorship. Soviet land reforms and industrial nationalization improved workers' and peasants' lives. In Asia, the Chinese Communist Party, founded in 1921, adapted the Manifesto to China's anti-imperialist and anti-feudal struggle. Chen Duxiu translated Manifesto excerpts in New Youth, inspiring revolutionary youth. In Spain, the Mondragon Cooperative, founded in 1956, embodied the Manifesto's cooperative spirit with democratic management and profit-sharing. In Japan, post-Meiji industrialization saw workers like printer Masao Oshima form unions in 1889, citing the Manifesto to demand labor rights. In Argentina, shoemaker Juan Garque's 18 Workers' Mutual Aid Society pushed for an 8-hour workday. In North America, German immigrant Carl Schmitt organized Chicago's May 1890 Day March, commemorating the Haymarket Affair. The U.S. Civil Rights Movement, led by Martin Luther King Jr., in 1963, echoed the Manifesto's call for unity and justice. In Brazil, 1962's landless farmer Jose Pereira organized cooperatives, quoting the Manifesto, "The land should belong to those who till it." Chapter 5 The Tension of the Theory Light and Shadow. The Communist Manifesto profoundly shaped the world but sparked controversy. Economist Joseph Schumpeter argued that abolishing private property could stifle innovation. Some 20th-century socialist experiments struggled due to neglect of market mechanisms. The class struggle theory faced challenges as the Western middle class grew, favoring reform over revolution. In 1959, Germany's Social Democratic Party abandoned revolutionary goals in its Bad Godesberg program. Yet, the Manifesto's critique of capitalism remains relevant. In 2020, the top 1% own half the world's wealth. Technological advances, while boosting productivity, created precarious jobs for digital workers like rideshare drivers. The 2011 Occupy Wall Street movement slogan, "We are the 99, echoed the Manifesto's class analysis. The Manifesto's internationalism is vital in addressing global challenges like climate change and pandemics. It states, "United action, at least of the civilized nations, is one of the first conditions for the emancipation of the proletariat." Modern technology offers new platforms for the Manifesto's ideas. In 2023, California driver Isaac Gomez joined a union to protest platform exploitation. In 2021, global programmers coordinated online to protest 996 work culture. The Manifesto's limitations include its abstract vision of a post-capitalist society. Questions remain about organizing production and balancing individual freedom with collective interests. In the 1872 preface to the German edition, Marx noted, "The general principles laid down in the Manifesto are, on the whole, as correct today as ever." Chapter 6 The Call to Action, the Manifesto's Practical Inspiration. The Communist Manifesto is not just theory but a guide to action. It emphasizes proletarian agency, urging workers to change their fate through organization and struggle. In 1888, London dockworkers, led by Annie Besant, struck for better wages and conditions, proving the power of unity. In modern Italy, Bologna's social cooperatives, started in 1978, provide democratic management in healthcare, education, and employment. On a personal level, the Manifesto inspires action for social good. In 2018, Swedish activist Greta Thunberg launched Fridays for Future, echoing the Manifesto's call for united action. Thunberg said at the UN, "We need unity, not division." Some companies, like Denmark's Novo Nordisk, adopt profit-sharing plans, aligning with the manifesto's vision of distributive justice. In education, Brazilian educator Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed draws on the manifesto's principle of self-emancipation. Freire wrote, "No one can liberate others. The people must liberate themselves." Epilogue: the contemporary light of the manifesto. The Communist Manifesto is not just a historical echo but a guide for the future. It reminds us that progress stems from resisting injustice. From 19th century factory workers to today's digital laborers, the pursuit of fairness endures. Individually, the manifesto encourages us to reflect on our roles and contribute to society through cooperation and innovation. Like Engels' observations in Manchester, small changes can converge into historical tides. We can start small, supporting fair trade or volunteering, living out the manifesto's spirit of justice. On a societal level, it calls for unity across borders and classes. Global challenges like climate change and inequality demand collective action. As the manifesto declares, workers of the world unite. This is not just a slogan, but a belief humanity's future depends on our shared efforts. For over 170 years, the manifesto has been a beacon for countless struggles. It tells us that history is not an endpoint, but a starting point. As long as injustice persists, the struggle continues. With unwavering conviction, the future holds hope. Let the wisdom of the manifesto guide us to write a new chapter in history.